Hi, everyone. Welcome to Girls Night Live. We are so happy you're here with us today. We are coming to you live from Richmond, California with Yvonne, professional communicator and podcast host. Today is all about public speaking. So let's give a warm welcome to Yvonne.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? I'll go ahead and share my screen now so that you can take a look at it. If I can get a little thumbs up letting me know that you can see the screen, that would be awesome. I can see some of you. Are you all able to see my screen right now? Great. Sweet. Well, thank you so much for being here. As Rick mentioned, my name is Yvonne Armenta, and I'm the founder of Chats with Yvonne. So if you head on over to Instagram and a couple of other different social media platforms, I'm right there. And today we're going to talk all about public speaking through the lens of my framework, Reflect, Connect, and Share. So my goal is really to get you everything you hope for out of this, or that at the very least, I'm able to plant a seed of curiosity around public speaking, the opportunities that stem from doing it, and the benefits of practicing it and practicing it often. So really, we're here to demystify public speaking because I know that it can be really a daunting experience for a lot of people oftentimes, which means we'll be breaking it down to understand its most basic form in order to engage with it in a way that leads us towards your already powerful voice to positively impact your life. Before we dive into that, I want to dive into a little bit who I am so you can get to know me a little bit more. I graduated from UC Berkeley with majors in media studies and Native American Indigenous studies and a minor in education. And more recently, a master's of business from San Jose State. So I'm the first in my immediate family to have done this, and definitely won't be the last if that's the path my siblings choose to take. Currently, I also work in the communications field. Something else that I like to share about myself that I don't think is typical is we don't normally do this in more professional settings, but I love my family. I'm sure a lot of us do. And they're a huge part of how I show up in the world. So I'm the oldest of three. And I always say this, I'm also the shortest. My siblings, without even knowing it, really have prepared me for my career, communication skills, event planning, getting them their shoes, getting them their clothes, and of course, compromising. And my mother was a single mom growing up. And though that was tough, she also is an inspiration and influencer for the way that I carry myself today. And this last picture here, well, sometimes I think that I'm kind of funny. You'll probably let me know, but this was my costume last year. And I just think life is better when you're laughing and sometimes laughing at yourself a little bit. And like I mentioned, I know this isn't typical to share these kinds of things in an introduction of yourself, but I think that we're here to talk about public speaking. It's a very individualized topic, and to start getting comfortable with it, we have to be okay with bringing and sharing past our career and educational successes and showing up as ourselves. A little bit about my public speaking journey. I officially started in high school with the project-based learning curriculum. But if you ask me to reflect, I was doing it since I was in elementary school, being the MC, delivering speeches on behalf of my class as a peacemaker. I don't know if any of you know what that is, but essentially I'd walk around the school, make peace, connect people. This is all in elementary. My high school was a project-based high school, which means that among those things, among the curriculum, besides that, I can give you more information on that later. That's a completely different topic. But part of what we did there was present our work. It was a special way to internalize what we were learning. In high school, my senior project and presentation was followed by the teaching channel, which is this crazy picture you see over to the left of me. Someone should have passed me a brush or something because I definitely didn't do my hair that day. They interviewed me about what it was like to learn in this way. Then as a result of that, I was asked to keynote the PBL World Conference. With an audience of 1,200. This was my first time ever. I was completely nervous. I had no idea what I was doing, at least not in front of that large of a group. So this was huge for me. And this then led to delivering speeches to audiences of up to 5,000. More recently, I've hosted live broadcast talk show for my current employer, Healthline Media. The show is called Good Talk. So if you ever want to check it out, I think it's still out there. And then I was inspired to not only share my public speaking journey, but help others in rediscovering their confidence through public speaking, because I truly believe it to be one of those tools that would guide you toward, in your journey, and whatever it is, guide you towards a better version of yourself. So with all of that being said, and now that you know a little bit more about me, I'd like to ask you, and maybe you can type this in the chat if you're comfortable with it. What is the first thought that comes to mind when you hear public speaking? I'll give you all some time to type that in. It can totally be I completely hate it. I love it, whatever it is. I'm seeing fear, judgment. I also see, Michelle, you said earlier, I hate to speak in front of others. A straight up no, shakiness. Believe it or not, I'm shaking right now too. Articulation concerns, totally. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you to those of you who shared, and keep sharing if you'd like to, because I think you'll find more likely than not that we actually have these things in common where I experience fear. I'm scared of judgment. What is my audience going to think? How are they going to perceive what I'm saying? For many, it evokes fear, nerves, uncertainty, doubt. Maybe you love it though. Maybe it excites you. Do you think of public speaking? Do you think of large crowds, smaller crowds? And I'd like you to keep these thoughts, whatever you're feeling, nervous, anxious. Yeah, I'd like you to keep these thoughts in mind as we continue through this presentation, because those actually you'll find that will guide you in how you develop yourself as a public speaker in the future. If you really fear it, then that's what we've got to work on. If you get really nervous, what can we do right before your presentation to make you not as nervous? So we'll go through those things a little bit as well. My objectives for today are laid out like this. I want you all to understand how to apply my framework, reflect, connect, share, leave with practical tools for being a great public speaker, and really start or continue in your own speaking journeys. One of the activities that I normally have people do, and I know this is live, but in a more if you had a laptop next to you or whatever the case is, you could totally do this too, is Google powerful public speakers. So if I asked you to do this and you went ahead and did it, you'll see that an image very similar to this comes up. And so this is what Google, at least the search engine that dominates 92.5% of the market, says. And if you see yourself reflected here, great. But if you don't and want to be, or this is demotivating in any way, or you think I don't see myself here, because we know that representation matters, know that public speakers aren't born. They were created and they're supported in their journeys. So that's what I hoped for us to do today, is dive a little bit deeper into how can you be a great public speaker and start to see yourself as a public speaker, even if the rest of the world maybe doesn't see it that way at the moment. Every single one of you can be really incredible, powerful public speakers, if you're not already. So let's dive into my framework of it. As I mentioned, I've said this: reflect, connect, share. I'll probably say it 10,000 more times. Someone could probably keep tabs. So this is my framework for becoming that great version of yourself as a public speaker. The first thing is to reflect. So it asks the question, what are my thoughts? Sometimes it's after that initial presentation where maybe you realize you didn't prepare enough, and that's why you weren't as happy with the delivery, or reflecting about the way that public speaking makes you actually feel. Those feelings that we talked about and went over in the chat. Why am I feeling like that? What is causing me to feel this way, specifically about public speaking? Do you feel more comfortable in some settings over others? And reflecting as a public speaker is important to not only understand your style of speaking, but also your strengths and your areas for improvement. For example, and I'll point this out, one of the things that I do, and it's not necessarily an area of improvement, it's more about knowing who your audience is. I like to move my hands a lot. I actually use my hands for everything that I do. When I'm telling stories with my family, when I'm talking to friends, it's my way of bringing people in, but sometimes it's inappropriate. So reflect on what your speaking style is and adapt to your audience and adapt to that. So you want to deliver your message with impact, and you can't do that if you don't take the time to reflect about how you felt and how the audience reacted to your message. So that's really what that reflect piece means. Then we move over to connect. This is the second part of it. So what do my thoughts actually mean? This can be connecting to the pieces of your thoughts to form sentences about them. It's the piece that allows you to connect more deeply, not only to yourself, but to your audience and to your purpose, really. Why are you up there speaking? Why is it that I had these thoughts about the way that I performed, but what does it actually mean in action? When I'm talking in front of people, how am I connecting with them? Connecting as a public speaker is important in many forms. You connect with your audience, who's a receiver of your message, but also with yourself as a way to ensure that every single time that you speak, your presence and your delivery of something comes from a place of self-expression and confidence. I think that oftentimes we think of public speaking as this foreign thing. We don't want to do it because we think we have to do it. We have to follow the rules of public speaking. And I won't really go into the rules of public speaking, because you can Google that. And I kind of want to move us away from that, because I think that sometimes when we look at those rules, we think it asks us to be a little bit more different, and it asks us to stray away from who we are. And so I want public speaking to be an experience where you feel you can come in and completely be yourself, and your audience is listening to you. And so this last piece connects with that, right? And this is my favorite part. It's sharing. How can I share my thoughts now with the rest of the world? Reading those sentences that you formed during the reflection or connection piece. Mind you, reflection can be done in a journal, it can be done out loud, you can record yourself talking. So putting those things together, that's how you come up with this connection piece. And many of us think about public speaking as presenting to large crowds, and that's why it makes us so nervous. But what if I could tell you that actually you're already engaging in public speaking every single day? Whether it's in a meeting that you're in for work, whether you're talking to your family members, telling them about your day, you do it in smaller scale ways. But in those moments is when you can practice openly and frequently to form the kind of speaker you want to be. How are you showing up when you're talking to your friends? How are you showing up when you're talking to large crowds or in meetings? Is there something that you can replicate? One of the things that I always say is, how do I feel when I am talking to a friend and saying a story? Do I feel restricted? Probably not as much. Maybe you feel like you need to add a couple jokes here and there, but not really. So how can I replicate the comfort that I feel when I'm talking to my friends and my family and telling them about things that I care about and my ideas? How can I replicate that same feeling to when I go in front of a larger crowd? So next, I really want to dive into, that second objective, which is getting you familiar with just the area of public speaking. And of course, if there are any questions at any point, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm trying to keep tabs of them, so I will answer them as we go. So these are the 4 types of public speaking. We have speaking to inform, speaking to persuade, speaking to actuate, and speaking to entertain. This first one here is you're giving your audience useful information. It's as simple as that. The persuasion piece is you're convincing people to change in some way, whether it's how they think, how they move, how they act. Actuate is actually about that action piece. So you're there delivering something, delivering a message, because you want people to literally take an action. And this could be, I'll give you an example. It could be during voting season when there are people that are helping to bring people over to the polls and they want you to vote, right? That is the action. They want you to go ahead and go vote. Their form of public speaking is engaging with you, right? So anything that is a spoken word is public speaking. I hope that we all can understand that and agree on that. And then this last one is entertaining, to be funny, to make people laugh, to provide enjoyment. This can be the kind of speaking that you do when you're a host, when you're interviewing somebody, while you are informing some people, and maybe there's a way to combine all of them. In that session, you're actually entertaining folks, right? You're asking someone a question, and you're making sure that people are comfortable in your setting and are having a good time. So this piece, we won't do this today live, but I wanted to give you a way to practice at home. And this is something that I'll normally do with a couple of people in a room. And I'll say, keeping my framework in mind, reflecting, connect, and share, pick a type of public speaking. So you can do inform, persuade, actuate, or entertain, literally any topic that you could think of. I could probably say something like, I really love coffee, and this is why everybody should drink coffee. Maybe that's a little bit more informational, right? Choose the topic and then do a 3-minute speech. And this is without preparation, right? Because one of the things that I will always say is practice is key for getting more comfortable with public speaking. But in this activity, you just kind of do a spontaneous speech, because the idea is then you'll go back, reflect, connect, and share. You'll reflect about how you're using language. Does your heart start to speed up a little bit because you're not as prepared and you're scared about what you're going to say? Do you start to use filler words to fill space? What is your go-to filler word? In this activity, we actually find that out. If I like to say a lot, or I go like, okay, if I start to use filler words during this presentation, then I know what my filler word is. And then next time I know not to use it as much, or I'm more aware. You start connecting the dots. It's easier to deliver this 3-minute speech in the comfort of your room. So if you could totally do it alone in front of the mirror, but maybe it's a little bit more of a challenge to do it in front of strangers, maybe some friends. So if you really want to commit to your public speaking journey, interact with other people and have these conversations with them. Let's say, hey, I want to do a quick 3-minute speech with you. And then sharing, continuing to share that speech. What is that story, that knowledge or idea that you really want to share? Because maybe you won't share it in this topic that you choose. It won't be the thing that you want to public speak about, but it'll help you get there. And practicing often, the more you do it, the more confident you'll be in your delivery of it. And I know this is true for a lot of things, but it truly is, it is true for public speaking as well. And speaking of filler words, I know I said, I sort of talked about this already, but I want to go into why we use filler words so much. This is one of the #1 questions I get when I'm talking to people about their public speaking or they have a presentation coming up. I just can't stop using filler words. Trust me, I do it too. So these are a couple of reasons why we may be using them. So the first one up here is to explain something that's a little difficult. So we think maybe our audience may not understand. We think there's a knowledge gap. So while we're saying something, we use a filler word in between a sentence to give them some time to catch up to what we're saying. This one over here, it's a habit. My filler words go unchecked when I'm talking to my friends. If they correct me, that would be a tough conversation to have with them. But the thing is, we practice this all the time. So the thing that you practice the most will be what you end up doing the most. If I happen to use all the time and no one corrects me or I am not fully aware of them, I will start to use them in my daily speech. We use them to be polite. When we want to say no or need to deliver something unpleasant, we think that adding that LOL at the end of our text or that will kind of dilute, and filler words do dilute your message a bit. So it goes along with that. And the other part is our brains haven't caught up. How many times have we been in a situation where someone asked us a question and we think we know the answer, but we haven't yet fully thought it through? And so we start going like, well, like that to kind of give us some time to think about what to say. So these are some reasons why we use filler words. It's important to understand how we use them because when you are delivering a message to your audience, it can very much dilute what you're trying to say. My very first speech, I rewatched it actually, and I posted a video on my Instagram about it too, but I did a reaction video to my very first keynote presentation and how I would deliver it now and gave my past self some feedback. And the #1 thing was I used the word so many times because I was nervous, because it was my first time presenting in front of a huge crowd, which is totally fine and normal. We grow as public speakers, but had I not gone back and looked at that video, I probably wouldn't have known. The one thing that I remember is that I was saying something that meant a lot to me and that was really powerful to who I am and how I identify. But I found that the message was diluted because I kept using the word almost after every second word that I said. So how do we stop using filler words? The first one, and you'll probably get tired of me saying this, is really to practice. You have to practice and practice often. I've said this a lot, but you don't get better at public speaking if you don't practice. Not only practicing the same speech a couple times before you actually deliver it, but actually practicing consistently, even in your daily routine. One of the things that I like to do, and that maybe you'd like to also do, is I have a deck of note cards that are kind of dusty and busted already at this point because I've had them for years. I should probably laminate them, but they all have different words behind them. And occasionally when I'm feeling like I need to practice my public speaking, I'll pull a random card out and I'll give a 3-minute speech on. And that's sort of how that activity came to mind, is I'll give a 3-minute speech on something and just talk about it. And I practice not using filler words. If I need to pause, I pause. If I need to take a sip of water, I'll take a sip of water. So those are things you can do. And then of course, again, reflect, connect, and share. If I know what filler words I use often, I can connect the dots and make sure that I don't use them again so that the next time that I share with my audience, there's less of those. And I want to jump into the 5 benefits of public speaking. There are so many, right? But these are the 5 that I pointed out. And the reason I think it's important to call out the benefits of public speaking is because, again, that first question that I asked you all, when you think of public speaking, you think of fear, you think of nerves, you think of pretty much all the bad things, right? And so these are all the good things. I want to show you the good part of being a great public speaker. It actually builds your confidence. Every single time that I've engaged in public speaking, I feel more confident, whether it's because I did it just because I was really proud of myself or because I received good feedback. It makes you feel good to be yourself and have people listen. So I want you all to like think, maybe even write it down. If you could give a speech, if you could engage in public speaking, what would be that topic? Would it be your story? Would it be educational? What would be your TED Talk? Write that down, put it in the chat if you'd like to, and share with us. But it's also, public speaking is also good for personal development, leadership skills, motivating not only yourself, but others. You are power, and you have the ability to impact people in ways that you probably don't even know. And public speaking could very well be that avenue for you. And you can also get paid. You can get paid really well to be a public speaker. I think this is part of the public speaking journey that not a lot of people talk about is, for example, if you were to look up for 15 minutes of your time, a really seasoned public speaker, you can make $5,000 to $10,000 for 15 minutes of your time. And that's wild. And all it takes is you practicing often, having a story that people want to listen to, and feeling really confident in who you are and how you deliver your message. Sometimes when I'm doing a couple of these workshops, that's when people are like, wait, what? I can make that much money in 15 minutes? It's like, yeah. So before I get to the last part, because I know I want to leave some time for questions too, if people have them. But these are my top 5 tips for public speaking. And this is sort of my guide, and you can find this on my Instagram. And the first one is memorizing the first and the last thing that you say. So this is a trick that I use because when you're first starting off a public speaking engagement, to start off on the right note, you're probably really nervous at the beginning because you know everything in between. You are the expert at whatever it is that they asked you to talk about. They wouldn't have asked you to talk if you weren't the expert. But at the very beginning, it's natural to have these nerves. So memorize what you're going to say, your very first sentence, even if it's something simple as, hey, everybody, my name's Yvonne. Thank you so much for being here. That already sets you on the right foot to start and kickstart that presentation. And then memorizing the very last thing could help you to make sure that whatever your message is, people really got it. Whatever that call to action is, people really understand it. Because you don't really need to memorize anything in between. You can have bullet points, but you're already the expert at whatever it is that you're talking about. So memorizing the first and the last thing that you say will really set you up for the entirety of your presentation. Tip number 2 is to practice authenticity. I think, as I mentioned, oftentimes we think of public speaking as something that asks us to be something that we're not. Stand up straight, look right ahead, don't move too much, pay attention to your body language, don't do this, don't do that. It's really negative. So, and in the many of the spaces that we're a part of, oftentimes we have to maybe not completely show up as ourselves, whether that's something as simple as, maybe I'm not going to wear this bold red lipstick to this meeting, or whether it's, I don't know if I want to drink this tea right now because it smells weird, whatever it is. Sometimes we have to dilute a little bit of who we are depending where we are. So public speaking, to get really good at public speaking, you have to practice authenticity. When you're talking to people, people will know and will gravitate towards you because of who you are. Because everybody could speak on anything. But it's really, what makes it really special is the delivery of it and the person delivering it. This third one is paying attention to your body language. So what are you expressing when you are moving around the stage, when you're using your hands like I do a lot? What is that? And one of the things that I sometimes do is I'll watch a video of a recording and I'll just take a look at someone's body language. What are they communicating there? Because that's also a very powerful tool of communication. This fourth one is practicing mindfulness, whatever it means to you. I know when we think of mindfulness, we think maybe it's meditation, but maybe it's just let me go on a quick 5-minute walk right before this. Let me breathe. I breathe. I do what's called box breathing. So you inhale for 5, you hold for 5, and you exhale for 5. And you kind of just do it in a circle. I repeat that 3 times and it calms my nerves. It just makes me really aware of my breathing. And the idea with mindfulness is to practice something that feels good to you and that will center you so that the nerves won't go away, but it'll center you in the experience and say, okay, because I am nervous, I'm going to do really well at this public speaking engagement. And then tip number 5, and I'm not sure if a lot of people speak Spanish or you don't, but I'll try my best to translate it. Tip number 5 is ponte perra. And like many languages, if there's people in the audience that speak multiple languages, sometimes there's just not a direct translation, or there is, but it wouldn't really fit to what I'm actually meaning to say. Ponte perra is my affirmation. It is it's kind of like Nike's Just Do It. So whenever I'm feeling nervous, whenever I'm doubting myself, whenever I am feeling not as confident in who I am or my delivery of something, I say to myself, Yvonne, ponte perra. And that can be something that if for you it's Yvonne, get it together, or it's just do it, go for it. Whatever it is, find that one affirmation, your slogan, your mantra, you could say, that makes you feel good. And it affirms you of your greatness. And then the last thing that I'll say before we go over to questions is get comfortable being the center of attention. I feel like oftentimes we just don't do this. We're not comfortable. I can speak as a woman sometimes. I'd rather not take the stage, and oftentimes we're not given as many of those opportunities to take the stage. The stage can be a seat at the table. The stage can be wherever. It doesn't have to be in a big auditorium. But get comfortable with being the center of attention. It's important to know when to step back and step up. And with public speaking, we need to be comfortable with being this, and know that we are there because we're the experts, and we're not. And if we aren't, it's okay. We can find ways to get there. But people want to hear from us. So get comfortable with it. And I'll end with this. If you don't already, I encourage you to follow me on Chats with Yvonne on Instagram and a couple of my other social medias. I think they're linked in the chat box. This is a space where I not only share my public speaking journey, but I provide even more tips for gaining confidence through public speaking. My Ponte Perra Affirmations podcast is just that. It's an affirmations podcast, and it's part of that reflection piece that I talk about, because, maybe one day you're about to go up on stage and you need to hear some affirmations. I've got you. I do weekly IG lives with women that are channeling their own confidence in their journeys, not necessarily through public speaking, and they're helping others do the same. I drop the occasional funny reel in there, or so I think. And of course, you all have access to me. I provide coaching and feedback, free consultations as well, for anybody that's interested in practicing public speaking, getting better at it, or finding out what kinds of opportunities can be open to you once you engage in the art of public speaking. And with that, I'll go ahead and end my session. And thank you all so much for listening to me. I know I talked a lot, but I hope that it was interesting and helpful. And I am happy to answer questions now. And of course, follow up with me via Instagram and all of my other social media platforms, and I'm happy to answer them there if I don't get a chance to do so here.